Happy St. Patrick's Day. It's not St. Patrick's Day yet, but it's the Irish NFL show. It's St. Patrick's Day week. Welcome to everyone around the world watching. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Colin Cronin, Brian O'Leary. To kick it off, is there anything more Irish than Jeff Reinbold in Hawaii? Happy St. Patrick's Day, Jeff. How's the form?
Hey, I tell you, I am sitting in the Hilo Town Tavern, and I am saluting you guys on Happy St. Patrick's Day. I know it ain't today, but every day is St. Patrick's Day with you Irish characters.
Jeff, I love how you were over with us. We had a great time here in Dublin, but I can see you've enjoying the sunshine, enjoying being back in the surf back home. I'm wondering, are you enjoying the arms race that's taking place in the AFC West? We've got Russell Wilson, we've got Khalil Mack. This is the most stacked division in football.
I'm going to tell you something now. How about the quarterback playing that division alone, right? I mean, when you think David Carr might be the bottom end of the quarterback barrel in your division, I'd say you got a pretty strong division. And it's going to be every week in that league, in the interdivisional play, is going to be dogfights. And now Khalil Mack, to line up across, and Bosa and Mack on coming off the edge, you better find some tackles quick to protect that quarterback.
Jeff, I'd imagine the Chargers saw what's happened this week and said, we better go get a player that can go after these quarterbacks in the division. Because
Mark, I think you're exactly right. That is, what's going to happen now. You watch how the draft works, too. There's going to be a premium on edge rushers. There's going to be premium on guys that can push it from inside. And, here's the thing that is kind of a recognized belief in coaching, that the rush helps the back end way more than the back end helps the rush. And what I mean by that is you can have, all great DBs that can cover and play man, but they don't help the rush as much as guys that can get to the quarterback quickly help the back end. So, this is a deep edge class in the draft, and we study the draft every week on Coffee with Coach, and it's going to be an opportunity for some of these teams now to bolster their pass rush, because they're going to have to, because when you got Mahomes one week, and then you got Carr, and then you got Russell Wilson, and then you got Herbert, ain't no weeks off this week in that division.
Jeffrey, Green Bay, London. I know Neil's excited. I listened to your podcast yesterday. These are very excited. You got to get over here for that. You have to get over here for that. Come on.
Oh, you know what? Seriously, man. I told Henry Hodgson that if I'm there for that game, I might break into open weeping. I might be like tears running down my face, because it's so unbelievable that the most iconic franchise in the football league, and obviously you can argue that, but when you really sort it out, it's the Packers and then everybody else in terms of recognition, in terms of fan appeal, in terms of that they travel better than anybody, a 30-year wait on season tickets, all kinds of ways to justify that comment. But to think that we're going to get a chance to see them on foreign soil. I mean, if you're a Packer fan anywhere in Europe, you got to be in that stadium to see those gold helmets in coming out of the tunnel at Hotspur Stadium. I mean, that is going to be an electric moment.
Jeff, I'm interested, I suppose, in as a coach who's been involved in the game for so long and so respected. How much stock do you put in the combine? Obviously, we see it. It's great for the media. It's great for stories. But as a coach, do you pay much attention?
Well, here, let me take a sip of my beer, and then I'll get back to that one, because That's about how much I care about the combine, right? Here's what's happened. The combine, once upon a time, was really, really a valuable evaluative tool. But what has happened now, it's become basically a made-for-TV event. Now, that's not to say that you're not going to get information there, but you're going to test these guys. You're going to have personal workouts with them. You're going to have them to your place. You're going to go to their place. You're going to go to their pro days. You're going to poke, prod, do everything. I think where there's value is obviously the medicals is really, really important. And then also what you can find out about them as you're around them. Because the players have become so skilled at the interview process. Let's say that you're my client and I know you're going to be interviewed. You're going to the combine. I'm going to spend a bunch of time with you to make sure we'll go through mock interviews. We'll make sure that you look me in the eye, that you do all the things that you're going to be evaluated on. And that may not even be you, but in that small, because they only get a very small time with these guys. I think it's 15 minutes. So that's why you hear about all these crazy questions that they get at the combine. Like, are you a dog or a cat, right? The reason for that is to try and get the kid off of his groove, right? Because, you know, they're so well prepared when they go there because they know it involves money. Now, we watched the DB from Baylor run the fastest time, I think second fastest time, maybe John Ross ran the fastest, but you're talking about 4.2 something, which is ungodly fast. But who was talking about that kid before the combine started? Not very many people. Why? Because he didn't play at a level that, you know, it's not like he's a secret playing at Baylor and, you know, he wore a different number or he played under an assumed name. I mean, everybody's known the guy forever, right? But all of a sudden, he does that one thing and his stock goes through the roof and everybody's talking about him. And how many balls did John Ross catch in his NFL career, right? You know, he ran 4.2 and he might have caught 42 passes in his whole NFL career. That's where you got to be careful about the underwear Olympics is what I call it.
John Ross played for the Giants last year. Jeff, one great touchdown, and then he went missing for the rest of the season. So.
Hey, that's his MO. That's what he was like when he was at Washington. And Mark, see, that's the thing, right? There's information gatherers and then there's scouts, right? Information gatherers go by times and heights and weights and, you know, things like that. But a real scout, he puts the tape on and he watches the player, right? And he watches him in all those different situations. When he's ahead, when he's behind, when he's against a good opponent, when he's tired, every possible scenario that he's going to face at the next level. And even at that, it's still tough because the competition that he's playing with isn't anywhere near what he's going to face at the next level. Les Snead, and I'm going to say this with some conviction, Les Snead has changed the dynamic now for how you build an NFL team. Because it used to be first-round draft choices, right? He said, take them. You take them. I want a first-round talent. I want a first-round player, right? Look at the number of quarterbacks that have been taken in the first round in the last 15 years, and the number of flameouts. What the hit percentage is on those guys. Now, you got a chance to go get, you know, Matthew Stafford or Russell Wilson or one of these guys that's a proven commodity. I'll give you 3 first-rounders for that guy, because it's probably going to take you 3 first-rounders to find one of those guys.
Jeff, one quarterback now that seems to be on the merry-go-round is Carson Wentz. 12 months ago, Frank Reich was going to fix him. 12 months later, he's put him in the bin. Are you surprised that Washington Commanders have taken him back into the division?
Yeah, that's a really, really difficult one to watch, because I remember in 2017, I went to the Eagles training camp, and Doug Peterson had played quarterback for us, in NFL Europe. So I was talking to him on the sideline before practice, and Wentz jogged out of the jogged out of the facility, and I said, "How do you like your young quarterback?" And he goes, "Well," he said, "he's a chunk of clay, but he's a pretty good chunk of clay, right?" Meaning that he was raw, he was underdeveloped, but what's happened is he's never really taken that step, right? And it fell apart on him in Philadelphia. Then Indianapolis brings him in with a promise of he's going to be the guy that can put a good football team over the top. He'd have better talent around him, better offensive line, all that stuff, and he'd really be able to play. And in one season, they say we've seen enough, and they get rid of him. That doesn't bode well for his future in Washington or anywhere, really. I mean, now I'm rooting for the player, because I always root for guys to, have a comeback story. But the last two stops have not, been good.
Jeff, just to finish off this introduction interview to our Paddy's Day special with Colin and Mark here and myself, tell me this: have you any St. Patrick's Day traditions in Hawaii or Canada or London or wherever you are? We all know that you love the black stuff. Jeff won't drink Guinness.
I don't drink.
We put that out there. He doesn't like Guinness.
I actually thought about ordering one and just having it sitting here so I make you happy. But then I thought, no, I can't do that. So I don't want to be. I don't want to be disingenuous about what I drink. So yes, I'm a lager guy. I'm not a Guinness guy, but I am a big St. Paddy's Day fan, because any day that you can wear green is a good day, and any day that you can wear green and drink beer all day with no consequence, that's even a better day.
Jeff, you are always a gentleman when you join us on this show. We always enjoy having you on. We want to wish you a happy St. Patrick's Day, and we look forward to catching up with you again in the not too distant future. We say the league is never boring, but every single week it seems that there's a new story, a new development. You have Coffee with Coach as well, which is
tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night, it's going to go throughout the off season as well. But you are always a big supporter of the Irish NFL show. So on our St. Patrick's Day special, it's only fitting that you are the lead guest.
Slante, fellas, slante.
Okay, folks, the next guest on our St. Patrick's Day special, happy St. Patrick's Day, early St. Patrick's Day if you're watching this before, to everybody, NFL Network media, James Palmer. James, a very, very warm welcome to the Irish NFL show. It's your debut on the show. We've been so fortunate to have a lot of NFL media on. It's been great to us. Great to have you on, James, and what a time to make your debut St. Patrick's Day.
I know, I kind of rocked a little bit of like a St. Patrick's look here. I didn't, I would like to say I planned it, but I actually really didn't. But I'm glad I'm fitting in.
There's a lot of people around me, James. Like I live in County Tyrone, right? And there's a lot of people with the same surname as you. Have you any Irish connections yourself, or?
No, I don't actually, which is weird because it's one of my favorite holidays. Maybe because I love drinking so much. But it is one of my favorite holidays. My wife and I absolutely destroy St. Paddy's Day. There's a great parade here in Denver every year that's just killer, and we've been in it before, which is awesome. So yeah, it's one of my tops. But no Irish blood at all. But I feel some sort of kinship. I think.
Well, I think you'll have to come on over for the Paddy's Day in
Yeah.
Dublin at some point, James. But at
You
this
got a
time of
spare room? I'm ready.
oh, absolutely, you've got three places to stay. Yeah, happy days. You and your wife come on over. We'll
Beautiful.
you can drink over here. But at this time of the year, you usually are pretty busy, and this week in particular, given that you are based in Denver. Can you talk to us a little bit, I suppose, about like the Russell Wilson trade? When did you first hear about it, and how it's played out since?
Well, if you remember, guys, last year on draft day, I was in Jacksonville. They had the #1 pick going for Trevor Lawrence, and that's when the news kind of started, or I don't want to say news, I guess more the rumors started of Aaron Rodgers landing with the Broncos. Right? It was draft day of last year, and it was like Aaron Rodgers wants out. Denver seems to be a logical place. Blah blah blah, and all these rumors started hitting. Those rumors lasted an entire year, and what I had gathered leading into the combine, which is when so many deals go down last week, was really starting to hear the rumblings that like it wasn't really just Aaron Rodgers, and he really wasn't their plan A, and Russell Wilson became their plan B. They had been working on Russell Wilson for a really long time, and all of this credit should go to general manager George Paton, who has only been at this in Denver for about a year, and a little inside, guys. Like teams have been asking him to move on from the front office in Minnesota for about a decade, trying to get him to be their general manager. And he finally took a job with the Broncos and, last year, and he ends up passing on a quarterback at 9. And he really had a grander idea, and he'd been working on it for months and months. And then I started hearing all these closed-door meetings where people in the organization weren't even a part of them. It was really kind of just like George, and he's doing some with a really small circle, kind of working at things. What he was doing is he was working on Russell Wilson with the Seahawks. He went back to the Senior Bowl several weeks past, and then they really heated up at the combine. And I kept hearing everybody was saying like Aaron Rodgers, and I was like, I don't think that's the play. Like they've actually been having their attention elsewhere. And then when we were on the air on Tuesday was when first the news in the morning of Aaron Rodgers going back to Green Bay. And then I think 2 hours and like 18 minutes later is when my colleague Tom Pelissero broke the news that it was Russell Wilson. I was on TV between the two, and I couldn't really say it, but we kind of knew it was happening. So I was like, hey guys, just keep your eye out there for I was like kind of like bullshitting. Like I was like, just keep your eye out there for a veteran. They really feel like they have other options other than Aaron Rodgers, like maybe somebody like Russell Wilson. Like we all kind of knew it was starting to happen. And I was like, well, just maybe that's somebody that, and it was funny because my other colleague, Jim Trotter, who was on with me, was like, I don't think so, man. I was like, no, Jim, don't say that. He's like, it's going to be too much to ask to get Russell Wilson. There's no way that's happening. When it was really so far down the line, really Monday night, the Broncos knew it was going to be Russell Wilson. So this was a long time in the making, a ton of work from general manager George Paton to make this work. We can break down the deal all you'd like. I think it's an unbelievable franchise-altering move for the Denver Broncos, with their team also being up for sale right now, right? So that makes it, you don't want to say Russell Wilson alters the asking price, but he sure helps in terms of what the appeal is of the Denver Broncos.
James, we had a live show on Tuesday night, as it happens, and we commented that over years it was free agency starts on a certain date. Then the tampering period came along, and that essentially is the start of free agency. This week kind of feels like it's free agency with all the frenzy and Carson Wentz. 26 million extra in the salary cap this year. We saw last year a lot of general managers have to kind of change their strategic plan in terms of how they got players in. Didn't necessarily jump in first day of free agency. Do you think that will change come Monday? Do you think they will go back to the old ways, or do you think they'll look at how they did things last year and maybe change the way they approach players?
Oh, they're going to spend. They are going to spend. And the interesting part about that is this year they're going to spend, and they're going to spend because they know what it should be the next 2 seasons. So rumor has it the salary cap in 2023 should probably go up about 20%. And in 2024, it should go up another 20%. So these general managers are in the eyes thinking, oh, okay, so I'm going to have 40% raise of the cap in 2 years. And we know how these guys can manipulate the dollar. Like Aaron Rodgers is not going to be, getting X amount of dollars at each spot, and it's going to hurt them with their ability to sign Devontae Adams. No, they know how to move this money, and they know the future cap numbers are going to be so astronomical from what they are now that they're going to operate in this free agency and in the next free agency, like knowing that it's just going to keep going up, and they know they can sign these guys to where there's back end loaded money and they can go after and get them. So the kind of holding area we were in with COVID and the cap not really increasing with the issues that was going on with attendance and all those things, that is definitely behind us. It is going to be fun to watch. And if you're a free agent right now, you're excited your time's coming up now as opposed to, a year or two ago.
The cap might go as high as fuel prices in Ireland at the minute. Had to put that one in. James,
we're at I Am Legend fuel prices right now, like when Will Smith was walking the planet by himself. Yeah.
You've obviously been to Wembley, and we've seen all these like that almost turned into like a viral video some of the time. So you see you from Wembley. I don't know if you've been to Tottenham, but obviously the games this season that we have coming up haven't been confirmed. But obviously the Packers coming over. There are whispers online, and these are merely whispers of apparently this Bengals Saints game. I have no idea. Nobody here has any clue. Me, Colin, and Brian, but it's really grown to an incredible level. And to now, obviously, after this week's news, have Aaron Rodgers hopefully in London is pretty cool.
Oh, it's awesome. I have not done Tottenham. I've done the game. I think I've done Wembley 6 years, six different games at Wembley. I think I've done. And I love coming over, and it's been a bummer not to be able to go, I guess this last 2 years, has it? Has it already been 2 years? God. And so the Packers was always like the white whale, of coming over and playing an international game. And everybody was just waiting for it. They were the last team that has yet to play an international game. And I think it's just going to be awesome to come over and see, that when the news got announced, I was co-hosting Good Morning Football. We broke the news on Good Morning Football. And everybody still didn't know where Aaron Rodgers was playing. And everybody's like, no, wouldn't this be terrible if finally the Packers come and then Aaron Rodgers isn't on the Packers? Like, that would be awful. So I'm so glad he's back and they come over. I'm trying to remember where everybody's at. Who's in Germany?
The Bucks.
The Bucks, yeah, the Bucks. And so I'm really excited that we keep expanding it over there, because my favorite part of going and doing the game really isn't even the game. It's like everything that goes on Regent Street and everything I have in terms of conversations with all these different fans, and they all have these different stories about why they root for certain teams, and I love that aspect about it. It's really similar to over here. This is my comparison. You guys can tell me if I'm full of shit or not, but like, my comparison is like the way certain people in the US root for EPL teams. Like, it's usually they have some sort of connection to I made a trip over and I saw, this team play and I got a jersey, or I had a family member bring a jersey back to me. And like that, I root. There's always these different stories about how people here are so in English Premier League soccer and like why they root for certain teams. I feel like the stories are a little bit similar with why certain people on your guys' side of the pond root for certain teams. And it's really kind of cool when I do a game at Wembley and you see almost every jersey, like not just the two teams that are playing, you see all these different jerseys because everybody's going to represent their squad. And so I got to get to Tottenham. I have to do a game there because I heard the setup is just phenomenal. So if you guys have any pull with my bosses, get me to that game.
Certainly, I think by the sounds of things, James, though, the league is certainly keen to expand further. So there might be games in France, Spain, Brazil, who knows? But you are, like Colleen Wolfe, you're a Philly native, a city that I spent some time on a Habitat for Humanity project. I was telling Colleen I lived and worked on Diamond Street for a month way back when. Just interested, I suppose, looking at that division and with the Commanders bringing in Carson Wentz. Was that something that, we heard about the Commanders that allegedly even a phone call about Patrick Mahomes, then the Russell Wilson talk, but then they bring in Wentz. Was that something you were surprised by, or was that something that had been kind of in the background as well?
No, it had been there. And first, Colleen and I went to rival high schools at the same time, and her school beat the crap out of my school in basketball when I was on the basketball team, which she always gives me crap about. But and she's awesome and a really great friend. And so aside from that, the Patrick Mahomes thing you mentioned and Russell wasn't, it just shows you that like Washington was doing everything they could to find a quarterback, and they were leaving no stone unturned, to use the catchphrase or the cliche or whatever it was. They were looking at every avenue that they could. And so it wasn't surprising that they went Wentz. The compensation was maybe a little bit more surprising than the actual trade itself, Now, guys, Carson is kind of like, I mean, he's kind of the epitome of the way the NFL works and the way sports work. Like, he has an unbelievable skill set in terms of his size, his mobility, his arm strength. Like, those don't come along very often. The other aspects of playing quarterback, the leadership side, the decision making, knowing the balance of when to take the safe throw and take the shot, like, those have been his struggles. And every coach in the NFL thinks, look at that unbelievable physical specimen. I can change him. I can make a difference. And this has happened every single stop that Carson has had. And I'm not going to lie, it's not over. I think it's going to happen again at another destination. But talking to people around the league, like, it's not a bad the Commanders are not a bad football team. They really aren't. And a lot of people thought they were like Denver, like the Denver Broncos, a quarterback away from really being a team that you have to keep your eye on. I think Denver's a legit Super Bowl contender now. But if they got a really one of these top tier quarterbacks, everybody's going to look at Washington differently. I think we know the Giants are in a full rebuild mode. They're going to try to analyze where Daniel Jones is this year. That's where they're at. Philly is going to analyze Jalen Hurts. Howie Roseman, their general manager, is never done looking. I mean, always. I mean, he is maybe the most aggressive seeker of making the team better at all times, all hours of the day than anybody in football. But they are going to take a hard look at Jalen this year. And also, they have a ton of picks, so that helps them. Dallas is really the best team in the division. With the turnaround their defense had this past year. And so I think Washington, I mean, the thing I mentioned about Carson is he did get substantially better, right? He led the NFL in interceptions. And then last year, he throws a third fewest in the league. He goes from 27 touchdowns and 7 picks, but it still was like poor decision-making at times and things like that. We'll see if they can fix him and get him back to that MVP level that we saw in 2017 before the injury. But it makes them very interesting. But it also shows you there's so few of these guys out there that you can grab. If you have a chance at one of them, people reach and they go and try to snag one.
James, I'm actually a Giants fan as it happens, and Joe Shane has a big task ahead of him. And one team that we're now starting to keep an eye on is Seattle, because they're in at 9 in the draft. We saw Malik Willis last week at the Combine, albeit it's, I suppose it depends what your play is on the Combine, how serious you take it. But he seems to be coming up the ranks in terms of where his draft order should be now. And will Seattle consider him and potentially even move up with the Giants, in terms to get up and secure that quarterback?
You would think if you're going to sell to ownership, we're moving on from the greatest player in the history of our franchise and his prime, and we're going to trade Russell Wilson, you have to present some sort of plan. Yeah. And you have to tell ownership, like, we're going to do something. The plans that I've heard out there are we're going to take these picks, and now we're in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. And if his legal situations off the field can be altered or completed, or we have some sort of conclusion to them, they're going to be players for him. And if that ends up happening, I think everybody right now says the Broncos won the trade. If they flipped Russell Wilson and what they did to get Deshaun Watson, who is younger and a better quarterback, and not in my eyes, in almost everybody's eyes, that they made a heck of a move. The draft is still in play for them, because if you look at where their team's at right now, the release of Bobby Wagner, like they're in a rebuild type of situation, right? So the draft wouldn't be out of question. Now, everything I'm hearing out of Indianapolis after the Combine was like, I don't see any of these guys going in the top 10. It always happens, right? Everybody climbs the ladder because everybody's reaching for a quarterback. Like I just said on the second ago, everybody's looking for one of these guys. So they always go up in terms of need. And when one of them's picked, there's a run because everybody goes, there's going to be a run of them. He fits what they do. I'll say that. And if you're in a rebuild mode, you don't look at Kenny Pickett the same way everybody else does, who's going, well, are we like the Saints and we need the most quarterback ready guy out of the draft? That would be Pickett. Or we're the Bucks and we need the most ready quarterback guy. I think everything is in play with them now. I would keep an eye on their interest in Deshaun Watson for sure. And I think that is altered after the trade, but I wouldn't put anything past them at 9 if they feel like now we have to get our guy. These quarterbacks are so different in their skill sets in this draft that if there's one you love, you better get him, because it doesn't mean you love all the other guys.
Sorry, Michael, quick one. If it is Deshaun Watson, James, then essentially they would deem it not to be a rebuild.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have to think about it. It's not it wouldn't be a rebuild. The quarterback decides a lot of where you are as an organization, and Deshaun Watson and his age being on the better side of, the underside of 30 and being in the last time he played, a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, and the roster that he was playing with, you have a chance to win with him at all times, even while you're trying to make roster adjustments. I mean, look at 2 years ago when he led the NFL in passing, and could you name me who he was throwing to? I think I caught a pass or two from Deshaun. I mean, that's where their roster was. So you always have a chance with him in a sense, but at the same time you can make some options. But you're right, your philosophy would change if you can lure him in, because you're going to give up a lot of capital to get him. We'll see how much capital actually, because of everything off the field, because he might get cleared of this, and suspension might still be waiting for him. So it's an interesting spot.
Yeah, it's one of the most intriguing storylines now of the rest of this offseason, James. And one thing that a lot of people really picked up on as well last week and the week before was the love for Indy and the Combine. Obviously, different cities now are going to have the opportunities to host it over the next few years. Is the Combine in Indy pretty much in your heart? I haven't had a chance to go, but everyone seems to love it in Indianapolis. I
love it in Indy, and there's a couple of reasons that have, like, logistically that I love it, and the league loves it. Not the hospital setup, the medical setup that is there for all 32 teams to look at a player and go through every aspect of the MRIs and the I don't know, medical terms, everything that they're looking at, right? X-rays, everything is in such easy access for all teams to be operating in it at the same time. And then for my job and everybody else, there's like 3 bars that everybody goes to, and that's like it. So you're going to run in to everybody. It's like stark contrast from this past Super Bowl, where anywhere you went in LA, you were an hour away from whatever you wanted to get to. No matter how close or far it was, you were an hour away. Now in Indy, you're like a block away from everything, and you can walk everywhere. You can go everywhere without even going outside. They have like these tunnels that just take you from hotel to convention center. So I think the league really does like it being in Indy, because there's just such a, where you're going to go. And the medical part is really, honestly, like a really big part of it. But obviously, just like we saw with the draft, they want to showcase, everything that they can to tour the country and do different things. But it would be interesting to see it in another city, because it just is Indy, and the city's small, and you run into everybody. And that's the best part for me. And honestly, that's one of the things that coaches love too, because so many of these guys are friends with guys that are now coaching at other places, and they're all just having beers with each other in different bars and different restaurants. And it's a chance for them to catch up. It'll be harder in another city where you don't know the stops that everybody makes.
James, just finally, maybe before we let you go, just to shift gears a little bit. Last December, a day after the late great Demaryius Thomas passed, you wrote a really kind of beautiful, touching piece. And just for our viewers maybe who didn't get to read that, could you just share with us a little bit about DT and the kind of person he was?
Yeah, didn't expect that question. That was a tough one, man. We had a really special relationship, and we've known each other for a really, really long time. And that was like finding out the news that night and just kind of sitting in bed with the laptop and kind of staying up all night and just kind of pouring my kind of heart and thoughts out about all the, great moments we've had. I would say the biggest thing that stands out is, he was a great player. I mean, great player. The combination of size and speed was unreal in his prime. And the amount of injuries he played through and didn't tell anybody was really kind of special and old school. But the way he was raised and losing his mother and grandmother and having them be incarcerated for as long as they were, and the type of person he became and the way he interacted with kids and the smile, and like that's really more the person that I think was more special than the player. And, his relationship with Peyton Manning, and specifically Peyton's kids, even after they stopped being teammates and Peyton retired and he went to other teams, like that continued. And it just kind of showed you, like, everybody's kids on the team were like huge fans of DT all the time. And that kind of usually, in most instances, means you're a pretty special person. And he definitely was.
James, you touched on being in Jacksonville last year for the draft. Jacksonville first pick this year, kind of different mindset this year. It looks like they're going to tag Cam Robinson to come back. So are they going to shy away from the offensive line and take Hutchinson or potentially Thibodeau?
Yeah, that's a really interesting play, right? Everybody was like, well, they're not going to take another pass rusher because they got 2 first-round pass rushers on the team. But I think it kind of might show you a way they think about their pass rushers if they look and go with Hutchinson. And the Cam Robinson tag was a really interesting one, because I know Doug Peterson really well, and everything about this offseason is based off of Trevor Lawrence. It's how can we make him more comfortable? How can we set him up to succeed? because we were really close guys with Urban Meyer in year one with Trevor Lawrence to be like, are we squandering the best draft pick at the quarterback position we've seen since Andrew Luck? Like, is this getting wasted, like, with what they were doing with him? So it is a huge, huge task for Doug Peterson to make sure everything is set up to succeed around him. We all assumed it's tackle, and I still would most likely think tackle. But the Cam Robinson tag makes you go like, well, what? Like, but at the same time, that would allow you to go with somebody like Icky, who's like, okay, well, maybe he's a year away. And he's a little bit more of a project, but also has a boatload of talent. And you're like, oh, Evan Neal's really, really good for sure. But it's like, well, maybe we can take a look at a guy that might be, need a little work. I don't know. That's a little outside of the box thinking. But the tag was one of the more interesting things, guys, that has come up over the last week in NFL circles. Was like, well, I thought they were taking Evan Neal number one. And so it kind of turned everybody on their head a little bit. But just really everything is still centered around Trevor Lawrence. Down there, and Doug is all about the trenches. So it wouldn't put it past me they went D-line for sure, but like anything within, it's going to be one of those two, because those are the really only things that Doug cares about right now with dealing with Trevor.
Yeah, and under 50 days to the draft. Now, looking forward to seeing Big Doug in London. James, just finally, obviously St. Patrick's Day this week. You were talking a little bit there about the holiday. Any traditions that you want to share with us, or there's nothing?
Oh yeah, well, we used to. So like, I'm not Irish, but one of my best friends here is, and he is a tremendous cook. And so it was corned beef and cabbage. It was everything, like all this stuff from his relatives. Like he literally has recipes from like relatives in Ireland before they came to America that he uses and cooks. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm a wizard with the car bombs. I don't know. I mean, like. The Guinness and JMO is like kind of like a big deal there in his basement. So that's kind of always been a tradition. That's usually after the parade in the morning that we take the kids to, that goes through downtown Denver, and then we zip over there for some delicious grub and usually sleep there. I'm not gonna lie.
James, it's at James Palmer TV. Obviously, NFL media will see you on TV all season long. It's obvious because your camera has already got its beer goggles on from Paddy's Day. So thanks a million for your time.
What happened just now?
Soon, man. Thanks so much for coming on. It was awesome.
Wait. Oh, are we back? Oh, we've been
back.
Cool.
You're back. Wrapped up. But James, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. A special Irish NFL show. Colin Cronin, Brandon Leary, Michael McQuaid, joined by the King of Harp, with descendants from Antrim. It's only fitting that we welcome Mr. Adam Rank back to the Irish NFL show. Adam, Fáilte go dé.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. Happy to know, number one, that they celebrate St. Patrick's Day in Ireland. There's some Americans who act like it's not an Irish holiday, and I'm like, whatever. I don't care for you. I am going to be spending my St. Patrick's Day weekend, because it's a full, it's a 4-day banger now, because Thursday's the best day that it could be on, because when it's on a Wednesday, they kind of, you got to come back to work. When it's on Thursday, they rightfully know everybody's calling in sick anyways. So just give us the day off. We're going to do our thing. Over in the United States, we have this thing called March Madness, and it's college basketball. And I'm on the West Coast, so we start drinking at 9 a.m., and it's glorious. We're going to golf. We're going to do a bunch of different things. But most importantly, I'm on with you guys. This is the highlight of my St. Patrick's week by far.
Adam, thanks so much. And I can't ask you about your heritage because you already told us last time. And I have to tell you now, I regret.
You forgot, didn't you?
No, I believe me, I know. I was just going to tell you now. I literally drove past an off-license or liquor store, as you call them, 3 times today. I was going to get a harp. I was going to open it on the show, and I forgot. But Colin, maybe you want to lead off with an actual NFL style question. But Adam, I'm sorry. I want
okay.
Well, Adam, our government must have read your mind, because they gave us a public holiday on the Friday in recognition of it. But from the St. Patrick's Day campaign to a campaign I had launched on this show, which was free the Chicago one, because I felt that Allen Robinson was so hard done by for so many years. And I guess a lot of that came down to Matt Nagy and Matt Nagy doing Matt Nagy things. But that's gone now. The Bears are free of Matt Nagy and new head coach. But Allen Robinson is somewhat at a crossroads. And I suppose I'm just interested in your take, kind of looking at the Robinson side of things. What does he come back? If he does come back, what kind of role does he have? What are we going to see from the Bears, or what do you hope to see from the Bears?
Well, I still believe that Allen Robinson is an elite level wide receiver. And I think with the market being shrunk with the signings of obviously the franchise tags for Devontae Adams, Chris Godwin, Mike Williams, Michael Gallup is expected to be extended. There's really not a lot of great wide receivers out there. So any team that needs wide receiver help, Allen Robinson is probably the best one available who will be hitting the market. And to me, I think it's important for the Bears to be able to bring him back, but I completely understand Allen Robinson's point of view. I am going to support him wherever he goes, unless it's the Green Bay. But I'm going to support him. Like if he decides, he's 28 years old, this is his last big contract. If some team is going to be out there throwing an awful lot of money at him, I'm not going to be upset if he does what's best for him and his family, gets a life-altering contract. That's fine. If he wants to go play for a winner, if he wants to go play for the Buffalo Bills, New England would actually be a pretty nice job or pretty nice spot for him as well. Again, that's going to be fine. I think the only place I think we're pretty positive he's not going to play is Kansas City. That's where Matt Nagy is. So I'm selfishly, I would love for him to be a member of the Chicago Bears. Realistically, I'm not sure that's going to happen, but ultimately I'm going to support him. And I think that he's done a great job for the Chicago Bears. Last year was last year. I would never hold that against anybody. So I'm hopeful and that perhaps they could bury the hatchet and bring him back for another year or two.
Adam, the Lions keep coming up in storylines as a team that are going to make a run at him, which is quite a surprise. Thought he would be looking for a better team. Last year, when you were on, you said, I don't care what the Bears give away, move up in the draft, get a quarterback. They did exactly that. Watching brief in this draft this year, 12 months on, are you happy with the selection?
Yeah, I mean, we would have liked to have had more clarity on what exactly we have with Justin Fields. If you think about the Chargers, after Justin Herbert's rookie season, you knew he was a generational talent. Like he's a great quarterback. He's going to be a star in this league. I still believe that Justin Fields is going to be that way, but we didn't get enough tangible evidence last year because of Matt Nagy. We didn't get, he didn't get a full, off season or, a full sense of working out. He didn't get to work with the ones. He didn't get a lot of opportunity. They didn't really scheme for what he does well. This is going to be the first chance to see what Justin Fields truly can do. The investment that they made for him absolutely worth it. If you look at the picks right now, I know the Bears would have the number 7 overall selection. That'd be fun, but I don't think that there's anybody right now that we're going to be kicking ourselves for not drafting, or at least not compared to Justin Fields. So to me, I just look at it like Justin Fields is our first round draft pick this season. I'm very comfortable with that. I think that we have a new regime within the organization that's putting an emphasis on building around their quarterback. They've got an offensive coordinator that wants to build to his strengths. So going back to what I said a year ago, I'm glad the Bears followed my advice there. And I'm glad to be having this conversation with Justin Fields as the starting quarterback.
Adam, I don't want to be the guy to do this, but you woke up on Tuesday morning, you see the Packers and Rodgers news. I mean, look here, a lot of us are buzzing because they're coming to London and Aaron Rodgers. Happy days. But are you just happy the whole saga's over now, or were you hoping he was gone, or what's the crack there?
I was pretty confident he was going to return. I didn't think that there was any chance, especially after how well he played last season, that there was going to be any way that he would leave Green Bay. He's no dummy. He can read the room. Like he looks at the situation that Russell Wilson is walking into out in Denver. You're walking into a division that has Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert, and Derek Carr is a very good quarterback too. Those are 4 great teams. You got a very tough AFC. The Bengals getting better. The Patriots are still going to be in the mix. Buffalo's there. One of those teams in it, like, you know, the Browns are not as bad as they finished last season. Tennessee is very tough. Aaron Rodgers smartly decided to stay with the Green Bay Packers because he understands the landscape. Look at the quarterbacks that he has to compete with now. Who are the best quarterbacks in the NFC? Matt Stafford, whose team will be coming off a playoff hangover or Super Bowl hangover. You got Kyler Murray, you got Dak Prescott, who are fine. But Aaron Rodgers now has an even easier path to the playoffs. And if he can somehow avoid playing the San Francisco 49ers in the playoffs, he's got a really nice little walkway, you know, like when you go walk to the pub and they've got the little lighted stones to make sure that everything, like, oh, they got everything lit for you. It's perfect. You would have to take you'd have to be a big buffoon who would take a big stumble. So I think Aaron Rodgers made the right choice. And you know what? We've had to deal with him forever. So it makes no difference. Like if you've had a terrible neighbor for 15 years and they're still there, you're like, well, my life is pretty much the same. We've had to deal with this before. I've come to deal with it. But the one thing that I will add is that I'm very comfortable with the selections the Bears made at general manager and at head coach, building that team the proper way. And eventually, 2018, the Bears knocked off the Green Bay Packers with Mitch Trubisky as their starting quarterback. Who says it can't happen again? So I'm good with it. And honestly, as a competitor, I'd rather be the one that closes the door on Aaron Rodgers as opposed to the other way around.
So Adam, maybe from one neighbor to another, the factory of sadness in Detroit. And Dan Campbell is doing his best to, I guess, get it going with all the caffeine that he ingests himself. And I can only imagine the amount of Starbucks truck that are rolling through Michigan. But talk to us as a Bears fan, but as somebody who is very familiar with the NFC North. Are there signs of life in Detroit? Are there green shoots?
Yeah, what is it? Like Dan Campbell is floating off the 3 C's: caffeine, Copenhagen, and creatine. Like, look at him. He's all yoked and everything. And it's fun. Like, he's fun for the NFL. Like, he's an interesting character. Do I believe that this Lions team is any closer to competing for an NFC North division title, let alone the NFC Championship, than they were 12 months ago? No. I don't know. Like, it's cool. Like, it's great theater. I think that we need teams like the Lions, though. Like, whenever you watch a show, you're watching AEW, for every Chris Jericho, you got to have a jobber to put somebody over. Like, they can't wrestle a broom. You know what I'm saying? So it's good. Like, the Lions have their nice little role. You're one of the NFL jobbers. Every once in a while, we'll throw you a bone. You can make a playoff appearance here and there. But ultimately, you're here to serve. So when people want to see the Green Bay Packers play or whatever, well, they got to find an opponent. Why not the Lions? And again, I have no hope for them. Jared Goff is still their quarterback. That's still a thing. Like, it's just one of those things. Like, oh, you guys are still doing that. It's like, I don't know. Like, one of your friends is trying to make like some word happen. Like when the pandemic started, I tried to get people to say refer to it as the Pan-D. Like, oh, the Pan-D is really taking a hold. Never really caught on, obviously. Similarly, I feel like the Lions and Dan Campbell and Jared Goff never really caught on. Like, we're not there yet. Like, no. It's there. They're going to play games, apparently, but I don't expect anything out of them.
Adam, we were in LA for the Super Bowl, and it was the first time I heard someone say, Brady's not done, he's coming back. And I just laughed at it. But as the weeks have gone on, the story keeps hanging around. I hope he does come back. I hope we get a Brett Favre saga come the summer like we did back in 2008. Do you think he's going to come back, or do you think it's just the story, Brady trying to keep his name out there, essentially?
I don't know that he needs his name out there. I think people talk about him enough, but it would be fun to see him replace Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco. I mean, it wouldn't be fun, as a guy who roots for a team in the NFC. Like, that would be disappointing. But I think that the last two teams that have defeated the Green Bay Packers have been the 49ers and the Buccaneers. And now if they combined forces, like Aaron Rodgers might actually retire. That might actually drive Aaron Rodgers to retirement. There's where he could be like, you know what, this isn't worth it to me. I would love to see it. Like there was no indication that Tom Brady was not going to play football this season. I mean, how big of a jerk does Bruce Arians have to be that nobody wants to play for him? Like maybe he is that way. It's disappointing. I want to see one of our best players out there on the field. I still don't buy it. And I know that Bruce Arians is talking about we'd never trade him or whatever and any of that stuff. But I think ultimately it's not up to Bruce Arians. And if Tom Brady wanted to return to the NFL, I think he could approach the Buccaneers management and be like, look, I won you guys a Super Bowl. I think that you can afford me the opportunity to go out there and play for my boyhood team or wherever he would want to go. And so, yeah, I don't think that we've seen the last of Tom Brady. I think that we're going to have somebody camp. Maybe it'll be me. Maybe they'll send me out to go camp in front of Tom Brady's house to give reports. Like, yep, Tom Brady's still here. Not been traded yet. Back to you in the studio, MJ.
DoorDash delivery for Tom Brady. Just reporting here on yeah, here, like you're talking about the AEW, I think JR would go crazy if the Tom Brady news hit during the draft. But like that Aaron
That's
Rodgers,
Tom Brady's music.
He's here. Here, Adam. First off, like this whole Russell Wilson situation this week, NFL Fantasy Live on Sky Sports NFL in Ireland and the UK during the season. You know, it was lads. I'm sitting up going, I might go to bed here. And Adam Rank sitting in his chinos is sitting there chilling, talking fancy football. 11 o'clock at night, I'm going, I'll stay up for a bit. Noah Fant, Jerry Jeudy, Seahawks, Broncos. Jeudy and the potential now for his fantasy. I know it's early.
Yeah.
It's early. It's March, but his fantasy. I know he's obviously a big prospect, but his fantasy outlook now surely goes massively up going into this season.
100%. Like you saw how well he played with Drew Lock as his starting quarterback. Russell Wilson will just take that to another level. Now I know there's just going to be the annoyance of having Cortland Sutton there as well. They're going to want to run the football with Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. We're probably not going to see him go out and put Devontae Adams numbers out there. Maybe not Cooper Kupp quite numbers. But I really do believe that he's going to be a valuable wide receiver in fantasy this season. I love him as a prospect coming into the league. Now we're going to get to fully see him with a credible quarterback. And I had him in Dynasty, so I could not have been more thrilled. And so I'm excited. I think that he will end up being one of the best, like regarded as one of the best receivers in the league when we're talking about guys like, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill. I think that, the impacts Stephon Diggs had a couple of years ago when he was traded to the Buffalo Bills. It's like that, he can go out there and just greatly improve his situation just by being traded or just by having Russell Wilson traded to him. The only question is how far does he jump up draft boards? Because it really, like, Devontae Adams will be number one. Cooper Kupp will be number one, or one of those two guys. It'll be between those two. Where do you go? Do you go Jerry Jeudy or Tyreek Hill? Like, that's a conversation at this point. Justin Jefferson, like Jamar Chase, like where does he fall? So it's going to be interesting to see how his average draft position rises this year. I think he could end up going as the wide receiver 3. So that's clearly going to be something that we monitor in the next couple of months.
Well, Adam, I suppose looking at, wide receivers and Seattle, obviously moving on from Russell, moving on from one of the great linebackers in Bobby Wagner, potentially a rebuild, who knows? You tweeted about one of their wide receivers earlier this week, asking what would it take to get Tyler Lockett to Chicago. We love stories on the Irish NFL show. Are the Seahawks in a full rebuild? Could we see somebody get really go all out and have a tag team duo in AEW of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett on another team?
Yeah, that'd be cool just to trade for the pair. Like, we'll take both of them. I would love to see that. curious to see what the price would be for one of them. And the reason I mentioned Tyler Lockett was, number one, the Bears really do need somebody who can stretch the field. And I know that DK Metcalf can do that as well. But I would really love to see them try to go out there and try to acquire them and see what the price would be. And to me, I was thinking Tyler Lockett because the price would be cheaper. You know what I'm saying? Like when you go somewhere, what's on sale? Like, well, you don't like, I don't want to pay full price for something. DK Metcalf, because of his age and his ability, probably would take a high draft pick, one that the Bears either, number one, don't have or wouldn't be willing to give up. Tyler Lockett to me seems a little bit more like, come on, be cool. Give us a better discount. Like this is not a day one guy. This might not even be a day two guy. Like do you just need to clear space? You want to get rid of guys? You want to go full rebuild? Because you can't credibly look at the Seattle Seahawks right now and think that they're going to be competitive. And so you have to start wondering, hey, look, are you getting rid of everybody? Are the fixtures going? Like Bed Bath & Beyond in Huntington Beach here is going out, like they're closing the store. You can go buy a light bulb hanging off the ceiling. The fixtures are going. Is that what's happening in Seattle? Or are they trying to hold on to some of their inventory? So to me, I think it would be worth a conversation to go see if he would be available. And I think that Ryan Poles, and I'm sure plenty of other GMs, I'm sure New England and anybody who needs a wide receiver, Kansas City, all these teams are probably in a mix. So I don't know. Hopefully the price isn't too much, but I would at least inquire, ask what the price is.
Adam, this is pre-recorded, obviously, and the Bears have just made a trade in real time. Khalil Mack has just been traded to the Chargers.
Stop it.
Oh,
no.
I swear to God.
Right now.
Like literally seconds ago. So
Ian Rappaport has just announced it. And I had to double check his page because we got burned on that earlier in the week.
I know. You got to be careful.
But yeah, Rappaport, Schefter, both saying it.
A prime draft pick compensation. So you might be back in the first round after all.
Hey, maybe we are in the first round.
Maybe second round.
Khalil Mack.
What?
Oh my God.
Any initial thoughts, or is it too early, Adam, to even?
What a time to take it. Sorry about that, Adam. I could have left it.
No, it's good. No, because I wouldn't want to ruin your show that way. Hey, listen, this will be my real time. Listen, I've just recorded a bunch of podcasts with people over the next couple of days. The Sick podcast we just dropped. We're going to be dropping tonight. We're not even be able to talk about Khalil Mack. So I'll probably have to get back and do one tomorrow.
Second and a sixth round. Second and a sixth.
Yeah. I don't even know if that was really, I don't know. A second round pick. I would have liked the opportunity to go back and see Khalil work with Ryan Poles or Matt Eberflus in that defense and have two guys like Robert Quinn and like Khalil Mack. But at some point, you got to start building for the future. And if you can go out there and get a second round pick for him, it is what it is. I think selfishly, for people who want to win football games right now, you want to see your best players out there. Khalil Mack certainly tracks that way. We wanted him back. We wanted him fully healthy and ready to go. But you know what? If somebody's giving up a second round pick for Khalil Mack, that's the thing. Like if Khalil Mack, if you were doing an NFL draft right now, where does he rank amongst the top? And if it's the Chargers' second round pick, that's later in the draft. Well, they did make the playoffs, so that's top 50. Is Khalil Mack a top 50 player in the NFL right now? I mean, that's what you have to ask yourself.
A lot of injuries.
A lot of injuries. Hasn't been as productive. I think that you know what? I guess I got to trust the process. This isn't necessarily what I wanted, but you got to trust the process. And so I'm a little disappointed. I got to be honest with you. I'm a little disappointed. I would have loved to have seen Eberflus given an opportunity. And I wonder how much of this stems from the fact that Aaron Rodgers is back. The NFC North's not going to be as wide open as it would have been had he, retired and Jordan Love was going to be the quarterback for the for the deals there for the Packers. So it'll be, it's sad to see these kind of trades happen. Now my phone's blowing up. So here we go. It is. Listen, again, I want to really believe in this process. And if this Bears team ultimately is going to be back to a championship caliber platform that we want them to be, you think because Eberflus kind of tracks the same way as Lovie Smith. And if we're going to build that kind of team, we need more players. And that's just the reality of the situation. The second round pick is a pretty good pick. The sixth round pick is kind of a bonus, but all right, 2 seconds now to go in there, add a couple of wide receiver and a tackle. This is a draft that really lends itself to allowing the Bears to replenish some of the positions they're deficient at. So I don't know. As a fan, as a fan of Khalil Mack, I'm bummed out, but as somebody who understands the business of football, sometimes you got to make these tough decisions, and I'm going to give Ryan Poles the benefit of the doubt here, and let's go.
Adam, just to finish off, I can't believe that happened when we're doing this. We'll put that on social media for the crack after this for a quick reaction. But
please do, yeah.
Paddy's Day, right? Just finally, obviously, thank you so much for your time. You've been very generous to us on this show previously and just on social media and everything. Have you any St. Patrick's Day traditions? We just asked James Palmer. He's got an Irish friend who cooks some cabbage. Can you better that? A 6-pack of Harp, or what's the...
I wear an orange shirt, which really annoys people. Is that bad?
That's the best thing I've heard in the show.
It's amusing. It's very on brand, Adam, I feel.
Yeah. So I will because the flag has got 3 colors. I will be golfing. Yeah, I'll be golfing on Wednesday wearing an orange shirt. It is one of my traditions to do. And then I had a Catholic boss one time who got legitimately upset. Almost an HR type. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm Protestant. Like, there's no reason I can't do that. First, now I'm offended. So I am the guy, and nobody thinks twice about it. You go to an American pub, like nobody thinks twice about it. But I will do it, and as a Presbyterian, that's what makes my mom happy. So, but I'll be playing golf this week. Is that bad?
You should just stick it Bears.
How much heat am I going to get? Are people going to hate me on Twitter now?
I think this is it's fantastically diverse, and I think it's fantastic, and people are going to love it from Belfast to Cork. And Adam, you're a legend.
Adam, just stick a Bears pin on it, and no one will think anything.
You know what? I think that happens a lot because my alma mater, Cal State Fullerton, we are orange and blue, and it's March Madness, and a lot of times I'm wearing a Cal State Fullerton t-shirt that's just orange, and people are like, don't think about it. But there's been people who come up to me at like a place that's called the Harp in Costa Mesa, and this lady walked up. She's like, I know what you're doing, and I don't know that I appreciate it. And I said, no, I'm not saying anything. I'm just sitting there in an orange shirt.
Good. You should tell her you're a Ricky Fowler tribute act.
It's my Ricky Fowler. I'm a big Fowler guy. That's the thing. Guy. Like, people will be like, they will say more. Yeah. Like, I love Rory. I love Graham McDowell. More people will be, I don't know. They think that it's a Ricky Fowler thing more than anything, especially if I'm golfing, or it's just a sports thing. Bears, Cal State Fullerton. You guys, now I'm scared.
No, it's good. Here, Adam, to finish it off, we will take you to the Bushmills distillery at some point in Antrim.
That's the thing. I drink Bushmills and not Jameson. So
we are equal opportunities. You can have one of each. Come to Ireland, wear your orange, and we'll go drinking.
Listen, Jameson is brilliant, though. It's good. Like, I'm just having fun.
Adam, a very, very happy St. Patrick's Day. Thank you for coming on, for your support, for everything, and thank you for breaking.
Oh my God! Yeah, I gotta go. My daughter's being left. I'll blame Khalil.
Cheers, Adam. Thanks,
but thank you guys.
Whilst this next guest on our St. Patrick's Day special has had a number of roles in the league, our next guest, Mike, is known predominantly by NFL fans as a former GM of the New York Jets, leading them to 2 AFC Championship games in a row during his time there, 2006 to 2012. Mike Tannenbaum, a massive welcome to the show, obviously spending time as the VP of Football Operations with the Miami Dolphins 2015 to 2018, and you're now a front office insider for ESPN. Mike, wearing the green for St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day. How are you?
Happy St. Patrick's Day, guys. Great to be with you. And I'm always invigorated and motivated by people that love our sport from all over the world. And it's so great to be with you guys.
Really appreciate you taking the time, Mike, to talk to us. Also, we ask every guest this, especially from the States. One, have you been over here before to Ireland, and any Irish heritage, Mike?
Yeah, I don't have any Irish heritage, but I do love chocolate and I do love golf. So I would love to come over to Ireland. And I'm always inspired by people like yourselves who love the sport of American football from literally all over the world. And it's so great to be with you guys.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time, and the sport is growing worldwide. But I suppose we're interested in hearing some of your stories, I suppose, and getting your insights, Mike, because you have been there and done that. And obviously, this week has been particularly chaotic with Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz, and the Mac trade. Just from your time working in the front office, what is it like at this time of year where you're trying to prepare for free agency, but you also have to keep an eye on the draft? How do you go about juggling those?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really a great time of the year. And I think, what's so great about it is we are trying to, from a front office perspective, compare free agency and the draft. And I think when you look at the Russell Wilson trade, for example, Denver had the 9th pick and they said, hey, be it Kenny Pickett from the University of Pittsburgh or Malik Willis from Liberty, we think that the best quarterback we possibly could get is Russell Wilson, and we're going to pay a premium for that. And I think we just saw Carson Wentz get traded from the Indianapolis Colts to the Washington Commanders, and likewise, I'm sure the Commanders are sitting there and saying, you know what, the best quarterback we can get is Carson Wentz when we look at the draft. So there's a number of factors that go into those decisions, but you're comparing the draft and free agency together.
Mike, we've just, I suppose, just gone past the combine last week, and it's kind of returned to the way in which we're used to seeing it pre-COVID. Again, from your time and your experience in the league, how much stock did you put into the combine? You know, a lot of people are kind of two ways on the combine. It's more so about the pro days and the interviews with the players that really gives you a grasp for what players you're interested in come the draft in April.
Yeah. So basically, it's an important part of it, but it's not the only part. And sometimes it's going to make you go back and look at, some other aspects of a person's game. Like Trayvon Walker had a great workout from the University of Georgia. He didn't have a lot of production. So you're going to go back and look at that tape and say, why was the production not there? So those are things that it's a meaningful part, but it's not the only part.
Absolutely, Mike. And we've really seen, across this last week, this whole period starting earlier and earlier. Cal Van Noy, Giants are really in cap hell and they're having to make difficult decisions. And there's so many more examples of this across the league. When you were in that position and you had to manage those decisions, how much of it was impacted as Rex Ryan, as an example, saying he wanted to keep a player at all costs, when sometimes maybe you knew financially that might not have happened for you because of the finances there. Was there any players that you can maybe recall when you were GM that you maybe faced that situation with?
Yeah, that happens a lot where, a coach will say, I want one player or the other. And I was just used to say, like, hey, we got to look at, all the information. If we extend to keep one player, here's who we can't get. I think a great example of that, guys, is the Rams. They put a lot of money in Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey and Matt Stafford. And therefore, because of it, we're going to have a cheap safety or a cheap corner. So the key to it, guys, is, making sure that you have all the information and then you make the best decision possible for your team.
Mike, I'm a massive Broncos fan, so I'm obviously delighted with Russell Wilson joining the franchise. But it feels like, the league has changed a little bit in the last few years, and maybe some of that is Les Snead and the approach of the Rams with them going all in, and obviously Brady going to the Bucks. What do you think of the approach that we're seeing now with teams, essentially kind of going all in and trading away draft picks for players, and also just then on the Russell Wilson trade itself? What do you make of that?
Yeah, again, I think it's certainty versus uncertainty, and I think if we were, if all of us were running the Denver Broncos and we had to go play Derek Carr, Justin Herbert, and Patrick Mahomes 6 times a year, we'd be saying like, wow, we better go get ourselves a quarterback, because without one, we have no hope. So we're probably paying a little bit more than we want to, but it certainly beats the alternative of not having one.
And Mike, there's a lot of talk this week since the trade that Seattle are in a rebuild. It's kind of a mixed opinion. There's still a lot of really good players there on the offense. There's talk of them at 9 trade, taking a quarterback. They're also considered for the Deshaun Watson situation. Do you think it's a rebuild, or do you think it's a mixed situation there?
Well, I think you could win right away with the right quarterback. I think Deshaun Watson's a really unique situation. We got to remember that there's a number of alleged victims. There's a civil case going on, a number of civil cases. There could be a criminal case. So that's a very unique situation. But there's a number of teams that could use a quarterback. Deshaun Watson would make that team an instant contender if they could get him.
Yeah, Mike, the Jets have the 4th and 10th picks next month, under 50 days from the draft. They've got plenty of cap space ahead of free agency this week. Do you think they're going to go heavy in free agency?
Well, I think, they could certainly help themselves. I take a guy like Teron Armstead. He's a guy that can help that team right away. They took Elijah Vera Tucker last year. They added Mekhi Becton. But if they could get somebody like Teron Armstead before the draft, like you said, with those 2 top 10 picks, they would be really well served to do that.
Yeah, just Mike, I was asking, I reflecting on your time with the Jets, and obviously the success in terms of the going to the championship games, and reflecting on that and how difficult it is for teams to go to the playoffs and go to championship games. I mean, we've seen teams say, Green Bay, who have such great quarterback play for 30 years, but to get over that hump. So just in terms of reflecting back on your time, what are the things that stand out to you, or memories that you have in terms of building teams?
I would just say there was nothing better than winning a game, winning a road playoff game, looking to the person to your left and right and feeling like a great sense of satisfaction. So it's one of those things where it's a real privilege, and you just try to make your organization a little bit better than your competition. And when you win, there's truly nothing like it.
Mike, just want to take this opportunity on behalf of us lads and of all NFL fans in Ireland to thank you for coming on the show, for taking your time at such a busy period, for talking to us, and wish you all the very best in the future. And hopefully we can chat again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'd be happy to come on as we get closer to the draft. And I'm very inspired by your passion. And keep up the great work. And I'd be happy to come back on in a few more weeks if you want to talk about the draft again.
St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day is special. It may not be St. Patrick's Day when you're listening or watching this, but it's this week. And this is turning in now to a tradition on St. Patrick's Day. I would like to welcome a friend of the show, legend Paul Paps. Now, Paul, I've brought you a special gift, a special surprise. We have the what's changed in your absence. We now have the Nitro Surge machine over here. It's a very funky device. Yeah,
you guys have got big time since I last checked in. You got sponsors. You're
no.
You checking?
We're not sponsored by Guinness, but yeah, we'd love to be. But here, it's great to have you on. Happy St. Patrick's Day. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to be on with you guys. It's such a fun time with the NFL right now, because it almost feels like, I don't know if you know what college football, it's the transfer portal and people are just jumping all over the place. This week on my show, the Dan Patrick Show, it's been every day something happened with Calvin Ridley, with Russell Wilson, with Aaron Rodgers. It's like hour by hour.
And Paul, like essentially one of probably the biggest story this week, we had the Aaron Rodgers, we kind of always knew he was staying, but the Russell Wilson trade, that broke last year essentially on your show. That was Russell goes on and he kind of announces that maybe I might
Right.
be thinking about leaving Seattle. You've watched it play out over the last year. Now he's a Bronco.
Yeah, Seattle is. I'm going to start with the Broncos side of this. Their issue was since they got rid of John Elway, they've been searching for a quarterback. They got Peyton Manning in that weird situation where he hurt his neck, and they got the number 1 pick of the draft for the Colts, and Andrew Luck went there, and that worked out for like a year and a half, and they got a title out of it. But the Broncos fixed their problem. Their problem was a high-end quarterback. I don't really care what they gave up for him. I really don't. Draft picks are cute, and people are like, ooh, we got 8 draft picks. But if you don't have a quarterback, I don't know if it really matters. And they have a pretty decent team. The Broncos have a good defense, some nice skill position players. And with Russell Wilson, he doesn't need much more than that. He just needs to be in games and with the ball in the fourth quarter. On the other angle, Seattle, it's not that I like what they did, because anytime you lose a star quarterback, you're doing something wrong, or something is wrong with your franchise. However, I think they thought to themselves, we're going to lose Russell Wilson in 2 years to free agency, or we could lose him 2 years earlier and get a whole bunch of draft picks. So it's like selling the house you don't want to sell, but the market's hot. You got to take what the market gave you for Russell Wilson, and now you got to get to work and find another quarterback.
Paul, I was watching your show last week with Dan Patrick, and you were discussing Saquon Barkley, and our GM at the Giants just essentially said everybody's available. If the right offer comes in, and he's had a really good conversation about where you felt he would be in terms of a trade offer. Is there any? Do you think it's a second? Do you think it's a third, or is that too high up?
Well, I think it's a little bigger than that. The problem with American football, the running back position, is it's such a low value position. When you come out of college, they don't draft you that high because they don't want to spend the money on you, because they can get a running back in the second and third round. If you end up being a star running back, you're trying to get that second contract. And paying a running back a second contract in the NFL is a terrible idea. It's been proven. Derrick Henry got a second contract with the Titans. However, he didn't get a lot of work his first 2 years with the Titans. He doesn't have the mileage, believe it or not, that other guys have. Saquon Barkley was a high draft pick. They shouldn't have drafted him. They had other needs, the New York Giants, in my opinion. And he was a good player for a while. Now he's an injured player. He is a star, air quotes, but he doesn't have value. I think a team can give up a third-round draft pick for him, but then you may say to yourself, well, if he's injured and not doing well, we could have used that third-round draft pick on a college kid and paid him basically nothing. It's really a flawed position financially in the NFL. But Saquon, if I were a team like the Los Angeles Rams, and I had a fourth-round draft pick, a third-round draft pick that I could let go and get him, to me, that's like a luxury item for the Los Angeles Rams. You just won the Super Bowl. You're not that great at running back. You're a passing team first, but Saquon could do very well there.
Probably a similar mindset to when they went for Sony Michel last offseason.
And has a higher version of Sony Michel in theory if he's healthy.
Yeah.
I'd say Fritzy's a very happy man at the minute, Paul, after the whole Russell Wilson thing.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the Paul Pops off-season, man. Not the cozy. I enjoy the cozy tweets like everyone else, but have you been in Vermont much since you were in LA?
Oh, yeah. We get a lot of Vermont time. We got a little cabin up there in southern Vermont. I got a basement in Vermont, and it's kind of like, it's concrete. It's kind of in bad shape. But what I did was I took a couple TVs and kind of just stuck them up on a wall and got a streaming system. So I've got these 3 about 30-inch TVs that are kind of old, but it's like my emergency football watching room in Vermont. You guys would be proud of me. It's all secondhand furniture. The rest of the house is pretty nice. A lot of plaid stuff everywhere. But I've got this bunker downstairs for Sunday afternoons. And now my friends come down there and watch football. So it's pretty good. But the offseason, I'll tell you one thing about the offseason in the NFL. Sometimes it's better than the actual season, because you could be in November and your team's out of it. I'm a Bears fan. November and December are basically exhibition games sometimes for my team. But right now, my team feels relevant. They're trying to make trades. They're trying to reset their roster. So it's 12 months a year.
Paul, I about a month ago now, you quote tweeted Chris Farley's entrance onto Dave Letterman's show, and it's one of the great entrances. And I suppose I'm thinking that I'm thinking the way Ray Lewis used to take to the field.
Right.
We don't really see that anymore. The kind of entertainment factor is gone a little bit on that side. Is it all the splash plays that we just focus on now?
I think you have a point there. I hadn't thought about it until now. It doesn't seem like the theatrics are there. People celebrate and dance when they make plays, but no one's really over the top. I think maybe people are a little polarized by the reaction on social media. Ray Lewis didn't care what people thought of him. Chris Farley was an entertainer. Going to that clip you're talking about, I grew up a David Letterman fan. He's my all-time favorite media personality and just one of my heroes. And I've heard different comedians. We've had different comedians on our show, the Dan Patrick Show, and they talk about the first time they went on David Letterman, and they're like, this is different. You want to please Dave. You want to hear Dave laughing out of the corner of your ear. And I know this guy named Doug Robinson. And Doug Robinson is a pretty well-known agent. He's now the executive producer of a show called The Goldbergs, a popular show on ABC. He was Chris Farley's agent at the time. And he was with Chris in the green room in back before Chris went on Letterman. And Chris went in there and he said, hold on tight, I'm going in. That's the last thing he said to Doug Robinson. He runs in, charges the crowd up, picks the guy over his shoulder and throws him into the garbage can outside. And David Letterman, I think, says something like, enjoy this, sir. That's the greatest entrance anyone's ever made in the history of the show. And you see Farley actually go like this, because that was the comedian's goal. You get on Letterman and you crush, you're kind of like got the lifetime hall pass with Dave. So that's always one of my favorite clips to watch on YouTube. When I'm bored sometimes and in a bad mood, I just click, and Chris Farley will make you laugh.
Paul, when we were at the Super Bowl, one thing that I wasn't taken aback by.
Look how casually he says it. When we were at the Super Bowl with our Irish show.
I know, here, if you actually, Brian, it's been a bad year, Brian. Jesus.
Look at these guys. You guys are big time. I love this. This is great.
Well, what I was going to say was after the game, me and Colin were talking after the game, and I'm a Giants fan, and Colin's a Broncos fan. My first Giants game was Giants Broncos Super Bowl back in 87, late January 87. So we're storied franchises. The Rams really aren't at this stage. They've moved around, and one thing that was very evident at the game and after the game was how many Bengals fans were there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's been a long time for them. And then obviously the next day, the celebrations, it took a while for the fans to get there. It's a tough market in LA.
Yeah.
Will they get to that stage? We were out on the Saturday night and there was a big Chargers rally, and there was more Chargers fans there than there was Rams fans on the Saturday night. It's a tough market.
That happened.
Yeah, I would say the answer is no. I think Los Angeles is a casual sports town. I'm sure there's hardcore fans. Like every town has hardcore fans, but there's a lot of different options. I mean, I saw on Super Bowl Sunday people out like skateboarding and stuff. They showed a shot of Venice Beach, not even watching the game. I think the Rams are doing well there. You win the Super Bowl, you got some good traction. I don't think the Chargers ever should have moved to San Diego. They had a really nice fan base down there. LA doesn't need two teams. They barely needed one. But if you go back in the day, USC football back in the Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush days, they were running that town for just a little bit. It's a Lakers-Dodgers town. But the Rams, they're entrenched now with winning almost always, get you back in the game. And it's not a hardcore football town. It's much more Lakers, much more Dodgers. But they put on a good Super Bowl. And the one thing LA does have, though, is free agents want to play there. If I was a free agent and could play in, no offense, Green Bay or Los Angeles, lifestyle-wise, Los Angeles may win out in a lot of cases. So I think they've got that going for them.
I really love the setup at SoFi, and obviously the NFL media setup now is mad. I do want to give a shout out to, you're talking about the Bengals brand. I want to give a shout out to our man Kenny Kerr from Athens, Ohio. Kenny gave me his business card. He's like 70 odd years of age. Hi Kenny, how's it going? But Paul, seriously, man, you had a hell of a week out there, because I was sitting, these guys went over early and I couldn't go out until the Friday, and you had a great setup. You had some serious guests. Like, I got to the point where I was about to text Colin saying, should we text Paul and text Will Ferrell and try and get something going on the but we thought you guys would be at the media party. We were going on the Friday, we were going to have a big party. We had this whole thing planned, Paul, Guinness, etc. It was going to be legendary.
So when we do the Dan Patrick Show in Los Angeles, we get on set by 7 a.m. every day, which is 4 a.m. local time. and I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me. I'm just explaining what we do. We go to bed at, I went to bed every night at 7:45, which is the most uncool thing on earth. But if you think about it, that's 10:45 Eastern time, New York time, where I live full time. So Dan and the guys on the show, we were going out to dinner at 5:05 p.m. We were the least cool people in Los Angeles. You can get a table anywhere in Los Angeles at 5:05 p.m. The workers are just getting in. They're putting on their aprons and stuff. And we're like, can we get a table for 7? Like, yeah, you can, because there's nobody here yet. We're barely open. But the one thing about being in Los Angeles is Dan's developed a lot of relationships with people out there, and we have as a show. And we asked Will Ferrell to come on. We didn't ask him. He texted us and said, what days are you guys going to be in LA? I want to make sure I could plan my schedule. He checked in with us to make sure he could come by the show, because he's a guy who likes talking football and all types of stuff. So it's really cool. Adam Sandler, he was in a position where he was home for only 2 weeks between movies he's shooting. He's going to I think he's going to Paris for 6 weeks. And he was on the phone with Fritzy going, all right, I'm coming in. I don't know what day I'm coming in because the wife has me on lockdown. So I'm just going to run in one day when she's like out doing something. And he goes, I'm not telling anybody. I'm going to be wearing shorts, a T-shirt, and slippers. And that's exactly what happened. He texted Fritzy at, 5:15 a.m. local time, said, I'm on my way. And he pulls into the parking lot all by himself, no security, no agents, no nothing. And all of a sudden the security guard looks up and goes, where's Adam Sandler? And he walks in. He looked like he was getting ready to go to bed. I mean, his hair was over here. He had a sweatshirt on and basketball shorts. And he jumped in and told us funny stories. And it never gets old. I mean, those are some pretty legendary figures there. But I also like, as an old school football fan, like when we have the broadcaster Al Michaels come by when we're in Los Angeles, to me, it's just a treat. Like my dad passed away a long time ago, but my dad loved Al Michaels. And to, have him in studio, it's like, sometimes you say to yourself, you get used to it, but you should never take it for granted, because someday this whole ride will end. You guys are on this part of your ride in sports media, and it's great. But there will be a day someday when you're like, no more Super Bowls. It happens to everybody. And so when you have Al Michaels in studio, you say to yourself sometimes, this could be the last time. And make sure you take a mental picture of it, because it's pretty damn cool.
Paul, I'm going to piggyback maybe a little bit on that, because you've been on with us. We love stories, and you're a man who has a multitude of stories. So
Or I'll make them up. Yeah.
Well, that works too, because that's the beauty of it. Exactly. That's the beauty of it. Like, that's like we used to go to the pub and before IMDb, and people would be like, hey, you remember when Denzel Washington was in Dallas? And you're like, right. He was. But I suppose I'm interested because you've had the opportunity, I suppose, to talk to not just big names, but really interesting, engaging, entertaining people on the show. What are some of the memories of people that you've talked about? Comedians, you have broadcasters, you've had players. Who are some of the ones that you've really thought, wow, they were really engaging or really entertaining?
For me, because it's such a big question, I've been doing this for a while with Dan Patrick. Sometimes there are people come on the show, and there are certain people you just don't expect to meet in life. I mean, no matter how big our show is, or whatever you want to think about it, I expect to meet Joe Montana. That's kind of what we do for a living. That's not that surprising. But we were at Pebble Beach one time, and Clint Eastwood came onto the set, the actor Clint Eastwood. And he comes walking over, and he's about 85. He's kind of frail. And I walk up to him, and he's the most intimidating SOB you've ever met in your life. And he's 85 years old. I go, Mr. Eastwood, I'm Paul Papps on the producer of the show. He goes, good to meet you. And I was like, holy shit. I go, it's Clint Eastwood. And the voice was just like, he goes, good to meet you. And we were all like, we were peeing our pants, man, when Clint Eastwood walked on the set. And like, we were both intimidated and blown away. But we've had other people, like I picked up the phone one time. We worked 6 months to get President Clinton on the show. And all of a sudden I pick up the phone, and the security person for President Clinton, or the PR person for the president, he's the president of the United States, goes, the next voice you'll hear will be President Clinton. I'm like, I was sweating from ears to ankles. And all of a sudden I'm like, this is the Dan Patrick. He goes, Paul, it's Bill Clinton. I'm like, oh my God, he called me Paul. And I talked to him for a total of maybe 20 seconds. I go, Mr. President, thanks very much. Next voice you hear will be Dan Patrick. Let's have some fun. He goes, DP. And that's the last thing I heard, and I put him on hold. And things like that just stay with you, because there's just certain people you don't expect to ever talk to on the phone with, and you never expect to meet in person. And I could probably go on for 2 hours. We've had those type of people in studio before, and it really is surreal. The great actor Michael Douglas, he was promoting his show. I think it's called The Kaminsky Method. And about 3 years ago, we invited him in studio, and shockingly, he said yes. And I asked his PR person, I'm like, this is Michael freaking Douglas. I mean, he's a big time, old school Hollywood superstar. What the hell is he doing coming on our little sports show? And the PR person said he never gets invited to do shows like yours because people don't think he's going to say yes. He goes, he loves sports. He goes, he loves Dan Patrick. I'm like, oh my God. And he came walking in. He looked like $1 million. And that guy's probably 80 years old almost. He had this tan suit on and a blue shirt. His hair was perfect. And he comes walking in and he was nice to everybody, which is the best. When someone of his level is super cool and super nice to everybody, you're like, wow, that's why that guy's a star, because he also is not just very talented. He treats people that way. So those are the ones. And once I start rolling, I could do more names, but I think the experience of them being very normal, cool people is the best part of it. You don't have to tell a story and say like, hey, we met Keanu Reeves and he was a jerk, because he wasn't. He actually took the subway to our studio in New York and just came up by himself with no PR people, no agent, nothing. And it was really cool.
Paul, well, the weekend was great in LA. One of the highlights was actually interviewing Coach Rivera. We'd been asking the question for 14 months, and they said, yeah, you can interview him, and you can interview him the weekend you're in LA, which was even better. I have a lot of friends who are Bears fans, and I told them you were coming on, and they all said, can you ask Paul what his thoughts are on the new coaching structure? And obviously now the Khalil Mack trade has gone through, so your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, you know what? As a longtime Bear fan, I don't get too high or too low. I try to be right in the middle. There's a new coach. There's a new general manager. I wish him the best. I have very little expectations of anything. I've seen the Bears play in the Super Bowl. I've come to the realization in life that I may never see the Bears in the Super Bowl again, and I'm okay with it. I got a Bears Super Bowl. I got a Cubs World Series. As I think I maybe mentioned you guys last year, my life is kind of over with that type of thing. I made my requests, and the big man came through. Look, I like what they're doing here. They got Justin Fields, a young quarterback on a rookie contract. That's always a good thing. He seems like a talented kid. I hope they get some people who could block for him. That'd be really nice. They just traded Khalil Mack. I understand that because you're not competing for a Super Bowl next year or the year after probably. So Khalil Mack, it's a waste of money. Let's get a couple picks, which we don't have a lot of picks, and ship him out to a team that can't hurt us like the Chargers and move on and, draft a younger, cheaper version of him, hopefully. So as a Bears fan, with Aaron Rodgers in the division for 2 or 3 more years, it's like I'll catch up with you guys in 3 years. And I think maybe then I'll be all back in because I don't think anything's going to happen in the near future.
But Paul, the week before the Super Bowl, I said the Bengals making the Super Bowl, having won 4 games this season, gives all us hope. Giants fans, Bears fans, all these teams.
Well, I think it comes down to every once in a while you catch a great quarterback, a superstar quarterback. And Carolina Panthers did with young, uninjured Cam Newton. They went to the Super Bowl 4 years later. Look at the Bengals had a pretty decent team, and they got this young kid who knows about winning. He won with LSU. And it's basically the league is can you master the quarterback position? Look at Patrick Mahomes, man. Nobody thought he'd be this. The Chiefs, other teams could have drafted him. There's, 14 teams that could have drafted Patrick Mahomes? He was not that highly thought of out of college. You stumble sometimes into things, and there it goes. You're a Giants fan. I actually think Daniel Jones is a pretty decent quarterback. I don't think he's as bad as people make him out to be, but I don't think he's a superstar. And so they're in a position now where how much patience do they have with unless you think he's going to be great? Because if not, you pull the plug. Look at if you go back to the Chiefs, they had Alex Smith coming off a Pro Bowl appearance, and they moved on from him. They said, hey, we got to search for the highest end guy and keep that guy for 12 years. So that's kind of where the Bengals are. They somehow got Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, who put those together, and you should have a really nice decade ahead of you.
We're going to be rude and try and do a couple of rounds each here before we go. Don't worry. We're going to try to keep it mellow. Paul, Pat Fitzgerald, Paul Pops, Northwestern, Dublin, August. You flying over, yeah?
I don't think I'm making that one, but it's good because people say I look like Pat Fitzgerald, the head coach of if I had about 20 more pounds on me.
I've seen the picture.
Yeah, I'm not that big of a guy, but I've got the broken nose like Pat Fitzgerald. I just didn't break it playing football. Someone punched me in the face like in 1994. But yeah, I think, what the funny thing is the next time we go to Ireland, I hope it's with the Dan Patrick Show guys. I don't know if you heard this one. A couple of years ago, we were talking about going to Ireland and going to the Guinness storehouse and the brewery and all that stuff. And we were in the middle of a show talking about it. And Dan's like, we got to go. We got to go. Dan's never been. The other 3 guys on the show never been. I think I've been to Dublin 3 times. And we're like, okay, we got to go. We got to go. Will Ferrell, the actor, was listening to our show that day. And he has our hotline number for actors and guests and celebrities and whatever. And we had about an hour later, we have Jason Sudeikis on the show. He was promoting a movie that he was in. I'm not even sure the name of the movie. Or he may have been promoting the first season of Ted Lasso. And we're in the middle of the interview with Sudeikis, and the hotline rings. I pick it up. I'm like, the past show is Paul. He goes, Paul, it's Will. I want to get in on this Guinness trip. Let me get in on this Guinness trip. He goes, let me talk to Dan. I'm like, yeah, sure. I go, we got Jason Sudeikis. He goes, oh, we're like best friends. And all of a sudden, Dan puts Will Ferrell on hold and goes, Jason, hold on a second. What's going on, Paul? I'm like, yeah, Will Ferrell's on hold. And Will is such a good improviser. He goes, hey, Dan, hey, Jason, I'm sorry to interrupt your interview. What are you guys talking about? And he just like jumped in and started goofing on Jason Sudeikis and telling stories about him running around naked or something at SNL years ago. But Will was like, I'm not kidding. I'll pay my own way. I'll pay your way. He goes, I want to go to Dublin for a week. And so Will, to my knowledge, Will still hasn't gone. I know he went to England a couple years ago, but I don't think he's been to Ireland. I got to double check on that.
Well, open invitation, obviously. Obviously,
you got to. What is it? A president, prime minister, whoever's in charge over there. Tell them to do like a declaration and just invite Will.
Yeah, I mean, Biden's basically Irish as well. I mean, just do it in like July or August and give us like a week's heads up, and we'll have a crazy time.
That'd be great. Will Ferrell for a week in Dublin. The content would be great.
Absolutely. But Paul, I want to take you back to last week and the tragedy of the pizza and the cheese and what happened. And what I'm wondering is, have you, like, for viewers that who mightn't have seen, Paul had an incident with a pizza and the cheese, about a third of the cheese was off the pizza.
Well, I'll explain it this way, and I'm going to ask your guys' opinion. And when you guys order a pizza and it's delivered to your house, I'm pretty loose about stuff. If it shows up, it's great. My wife opens up and she goes, ooh. I go, oh, like a good ooh? And she goes, no. 1/4 or 1/3 of the pizza had slid off like a lava flow and was basically off the pizza and kind of congealed in this corner of the box. And I was like, She goes, do we ask for another one? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's a little hot. They probably slid it on the chair in the car, and it's no big deal. And but she asked a question. I'm like, yeah, we keep it. We kept it. I just did some excavating and like putting down mulch. I just put the cheese right back and we just went to town. And but I posted it, said, what would you do here? How would that work with you guys? Let's say you were thinking about sending it back. In America, that seems like a dangerous proposition.
Well,
I mean,
I'm just wondering on this though. What I was wondering was, have you ever had this happen with it where you've ordered a pint of Guinness and you got a bad head on the Guinness, and have you ever been in that position where you've had to make that decision?
That's a good question. And here's the thing: when I learned how to pour Guinness properly, and then I went to the storehouse and really learned how to pour it properly. When you go to a pub and you see someone pour a Guinness improperly, I think it gets in your head and you think that the beer is not going to be as good. It's pretty much going to be the same beer, but the experience has been cheapened in some way. It's like missing the first 5 minutes of a football game. Like I've gone to they pour it all the way to the top on the first pour, and you're like, oh, it's going to spill over, or there's too much foam, and you're like, oh no. And the last thing a bartender wants to get is advice from some moron on the other side of the table. But I think I'm like you guys, a little bit of a Guinness elitist when I go into the pub and watch them pour.
Brian O'Leary, Paul, below us here, Hollywood Park Casino in
Yeah, I was just about to say,
had an experience with Guinness, Brian, if you want to maybe.
We arrived at me and Mark, who's not here this evening, we arrived around 9 o'clock LA time, and that would have been 5 o'clock in the morning Irish time. So I just said, look, we need to stay up as long as possible. So I asked the hotel, and they said, oh, the casino around the corner is open. Went in, saw the bar, saw the Guinness, and I said, fantastic, I'll have a Guinness, please. And I took one sip and went, this needs to be returned ASAP.
Okay, so was it flat? Was it like just wrong?
Combination of everything. It was flat. It didn't taste anything like Guinness. It quickly got returned.
However, Paul, I haven't told Brian this. Brian, Mark, and Colin all went home early on the Monday after the game. So I was sitting in the casino by myself. What did I order, Brian? A pint of Guinness.
Same casino.
It was lovely. It was creamy. It was lovely. It was grand. Do you know what? It was easier to drink. It was like light. I don't know. It was nice. But I think you had a bad barman in that casino. I don't know what happened or what.
Yeah, I wonder because I know I bartend a little bit. Sometimes if the lines aren't clean, stuff gets in there, and it can be kind of junky and can give a flat taste to the beer. If someone doesn't tap the keg properly, a lot of the CO2, a lot of the pressure can come out, and little things like that can ruin an entire keg of beer, which is a tragedy.
Paul, the guy had no understanding of what I was talking about in terms of when I said to him about how is this point being pulled. So I quickly ended the conversation and reordered another drink.
Oh, so you were grilling him. You weren't just saying have a Coors Light. You were getting a full court press.
Yes, I was.
The pizza thing, though, going back to this pizza thing, I was going to. Brian, I'm not sure if you've seen Paul's pizza, but Paul, and I mean this in a loving, caring way.
Yeah.
As somebody that lives in the countryside, just outside of a town, population of about 15,000 people, we have a takeaway, we have a Domino's, and we used to have a Papa John's, which is now gone. It was the only Papa John's in Northern Ireland, but that's a whole discussion for a different podcast. There's the pizza. Paul, for me, the pizza was fine, Paul. I was like going, come on, man, that pizza's... But man, the replies in that tweet, Paul.
Oh, well,
people replying to that.
Sometimes I don't... There needs to be a font on Twitter for sarcasm. I wasn't suggesting that I can return it. I was asking people's opinion of the situation. And I got thousands of replies. Well, people are like, dude, get over yourself. It's a good-looking pizza. I'm like, I just asked a question. I'm not anti this pizza place. But, like, people do get very upset and they don't understand. It's just like an experimental question. But, you know, I live outside of New York City, but we live really close to a town called New Haven, Connecticut. And that may not be too well known where you guys are, but that's where Yale University is. That is a hotbed of pizza. No pun. It is kind of coal oven fired pizza with a kind of a medium to thin crust, and it's definitely kind of like char around the pizza and on the underside. It's really popular. I used to live in New Haven when I worked at ESPN, and I lived on. There's a street called Worcester Street. It's got 4 high-end pizza places, like high-end, world class. People would come there, and it got kind of busy. I hadn't been down there in a while. I went back on a Saturday afternoon. There was lines. There was traffic. It's like become an American tourist destination, New Haven, Connecticut. And if you don't plan accordingly, you could be waiting like 2 hours for a pizza. It's almost like it's gotten not played out because the pizza's so good, but it's a tourist destination in America. There are people from all over the place. It's pretty neat. And I used to live on the backside of some of these pizza places, and they're pretty high end. They're pretty good stuff.
Final round of questions, right? So we'll all get a good question here. Can I just firstly say, Paul, finally, before I get my question, and the thing that has changed since we last spoke is we can now visit each other's countries, okay? Which is a good thing. Yeah. I had the very lucky thing of going to Chicago there before Christmas. Jesus, what a city, lad. I mean, like, boy, Chicago's unbelievable. Like, Paul, like, let's just start off here. Lou Malnati's for a start, but and to be fair, the Bears organization have been top class to and I have to say that they're fantastic. But seriously though, and you've sort of answered it. Are you going to come over this year? Do you think to Ireland, or are you just going to sit on the Saturday during college football and send me put up pictures of lovely deli sandwiches and annoy me when I'm hungry at like 4 o'clock Ireland time on the Saturday, or what's the plan?
I would like to get over in winter. I've only been to Ireland in spring, summertime. I've never been in fall, winter, so that'd be cool. Chicago's really, I don't know internationally what people think of it, but a lot of people are like, oh, I got to get to New York or Los Angeles. Chicago is a lot prettier of a city, in my opinion, than Los Angeles. There's maybe bigger, more to do in New York, but Chicago has that coastline of Lake Michigan and the big buildings. It's a really good-looking city, and Lou Malnati's Pizza, the place you mentioned, there's a handful of them in Chicago. That's some pretty high-end stuff. Some people don't like the deep dish, double thick casserole style pizza. That can be a bit of a crapshoot, and that's kind of like a little more. This is the inside dope on Chicago pizza. Chicagoans don't really eat that deep, thick crust pizza. That's more for visitors and maybe an old school night out with people who haven't been to Chicago in a while. It's become more of a tourist thing. That's not saying it's not good, but most people in Chicago eat kind of this thinnish crust pizza, medium to thin, that's cut like box style, not in like this, It's more like sliced,
slices, like little squares.
yeah, little boxes, and that's what people in Chicago and the outlying areas get mostly. But if you go to the city, you can have both. There's a place, Lou Malnati's is great, and there's a place called Pequod's. It's by DePaul University. It's sneaky. It's not for. It's one of the best. Pequod's on I think it's 2,400. It's easy to find. But Lou Malnati's is very trustworthy because it's kind of this medium crust, not as deep, very tasty, always reliable if you ever visit Chicago. The one thing, I think when I was in Dublin, we ate at some good places. I don't know if we ever had pizza. Is pizza considered like no-go in Dublin? Like don't even bother because you're missing any other good thing?
Oh no, there's some really good because we got such a great kind of Italian community.
Right.
We got some serious pizza places here.
Okay.
And Belfast, Paul's got some nice pizza places. There's a place opposite the Europa Bus Centre, which is very underrated after maybe a few casual shandies.
I think I mentioned it last time, but that restaurant we went to, Matt the Thresher. Is that the right, St. Stephen's Green area? That was pretty high end stuff. I remember that really well. But the one thing, we were in a place called O'Donoghue's, and that's a really fun pub. We got a burrito at about 2 in the morning. It's still with me. That burrito was traumatic and a traumatic experience. I got it from some type of food truck outside, and I don't know if I've ever gotten over that experience. The beer was fantastic, but the burrito was it came home with me. Let's put it that way. It's part of my life.
I'd say the Italian food great. Probably maybe burrito on the street.
Where were you guys in 2016 when I needed you?
Well, we're here now, so you'll have to come over. But I when you were saying New Haven, I have cousins there, and that was the first thing. I was like pizza. That's what comes to mind, and it was the first time I had. They brought me to a pizza place. I had garlic potatoes on a pizza. It was fantastic. But one of the things, Paul, I suppose my final question from me. Following you obviously on Twitter during the season, and you appeared to enjoy, like many of us, but me in particular, Deebo Samuel. How much fun was Deebo to watch this year? And he could do anything. Has Deebo kind of changed the game a little bit? Are we going to see great entertainers doing a whole lot of different things now?
Well, I think he's a unique player. I've liked him for a couple of years now. And, I think if you're a Niners fan, you know all about the guy. He never really got his due because in college he was not a huge name. And I watched him last year and this past season, the start of the past season, he was carrying that team, literally, not figuratively, but he was carrying them, running the ball, catching the ball. He battles for every yard. He never goes out of bounds. He's kind of a throwback player. He'll do anything. Like his number should be X because he plays every position on that team. And I think he started to get his due the second half of the season. And there's certain players like that. I think Jamar Chase is like that for Cincinnati, where he can play running back. He's not just a wide receiver, catches the ball and gets dragged down and really easy. Deebo Samuel's a handful to deal with. And, I like on the Dan Patrick Show, sometimes I'll pick a few guys who I think that aren't getting their due, and I'll try to bring them up a little bit more often with Dan in the show. And, Dan knows his football. Other guys know their football. But I think local fans in San Francisco or whatever town you're from, when you hear your player getting mentioned on a national show, you're like, yes, someone's realizing what we have here. And I think that's, if you consider yourself a football aficionado like we do, you can't just talk about Tom Brady all the time. You got to talk about Deebo Samuel. You can't just, mention Dak Prescott all the time. You gotta get to the next level athlete and say like, okay, Aaron Jones, the running back for Green Bay Packers, he's just as important as anybody. Nobody talks about him on a national level, but the guy catches 70 balls and runs for 1,200 yards. He's severely underrated. And everyone talks about him as the best running back in the league, and I would take him as much as anybody. So I like kind of talk about those second-tier players if I can.
Paul, it's a long off season, but this week, March Madness, free agency frenzy, whatever you want to call it, this week is always crazy with players going here, there, and everywhere, and crazy money being passed around. How does the Dan Patrick Show prepare for a week like this? Is it essentially free agency predominantly, or will the new MLB, in terms of the contract news this evening, be the topic of conversation?
The best thing for us is when stories break live on the air. We were doing Tuesday's show, and we were discussing Aaron Rodgers. I think it was Aaron Rodgers. That was Tuesday, correct? That he agreed.
Tuesday around 11:28 Eastern.
Right. It was about 10 o'clock that morning, and we were going our second hour. I go, you know what? I go, this Aaron Rodgers story seems like it's close. I had no inside knowledge. It just felt like by hearing what the NFL experts were saying that it was going to be done in the next 3 or 4 days. I go, why don't we do our official picks next hour, where we think he's going to end up? Let's do it before, because once it's over, it's over. The story's over once he decides to stay. So when the story broke on the air, we had Nick Wright. He's on Fox Sports on the air as a guest with Dan Patrick. I'm in the producer's chair. One of the things I like to do, if I can, on our show is to surprise Dan with the news. Not just like, here, Dan, here's an email, read the news. I like to see his reaction live. And I think that's a great thing to see on TV. Dan, I think, trusts me that I'm going to do it in the right way. I'm not going to put him in a bad position. So all of a sudden the guys in the room go, hey, the Aaron Rodgers news just came. Dan's not really on his computer. Dan's focused on the guest. He's discussing the guest. And so I go into Dan's ear. I go, Aaron Rodgers made this decision. I want me to tell you on air and get the reaction. He goes, just give me a little head nod. And Dan turns and goes, Paulie, what do you got? I'm like, Aaron Rodgers had decided to, and I strung him along a little bit, stay with the Green Bay Packers for 4 years. And they go, oh, and it's neat to see the real reaction. And it's fantastic. And we don't get lucky like that every day. But I remember years ago, it was Brett Favre. I think I maybe mentioned this on your show. Jay Glazer from Fox Sports calls me during the show, says, put me on right now. I got a monster story. Put me on. And I go, what is it? He goes, Favre's retiring. He's retiring from the Packers. I'm like, just nobody has it. Put me on. And I was like, oh, put him on the air. And I told Dan, I go, Jay Glazer has a bomb. I go to him now. And we didn't tell Dan what it was. And so Dan's reaction with the Favre story was real on air. He goes, oh my God, like he put his hands on his head. And I think as a producer, that's my job, is to, because at home, and if you're driving in your car or you're watching on TV, when you see a story, you go, what? You do whatever. It's pretty cool to see Dan Patrick do that. Doesn't happen every day, doesn't happen every week, but it's super cool when it does.
It's great to see your show grow and grow even more. Obviously, Peacock in the States,
Thank you.
and NBC owning Sky over here. Hopefully, I can't speak for Sky, but hopefully, maybe with Peacock, we now have Peacock a little bit on TV here.
Yeah.
Hopefully, that can go on the NFL channel alongside some of the NBC content this season. Let's see what happens. We'll try and see what we can do there. But Paul, seriously, man, we said it off air, we'll say it on there. It's been great to get you virtually. Hopefully, we can meet up for a few pints this year, maybe in Vermont or in Dublin. We'll see the crack. But just honestly, thank you so much for the support that you gave us. And if it wasn't for people like you, we wouldn't be here at the minute. So obviously,
well, I think what you guys are doing is important. The NFL needs you only need 1 or 2 shows in a country to serve the community. There's lots of people in Ireland and England that grew up watching BBC back in the 80s and 90s, and they want some football coverage. And, someone's got to do it. Everyone sits around and goes, I wish there was a show. You guys said, let's do a show. Let's just do it. And I'm sure you've noticed over the past 2 years that there's a demand for it in your country. And, the cool thing about you guys is that, there's people you might be able to get on your show. Like, I think you can get the commissioner of the NFL on your show someday. They want to grow the show in Ireland. And if I were the commissioner, I would go on your show. And then that would get a lot of coverage in Ireland and serve his purpose of growing the show. If there's a show in England, they should do the same thing. But I'm sure I'll see you guys in Arizona next year for the Super Bowl. You guys will be the big sets and you'll be the big sponsors. I don't have time for Paul anymore. We got, we're going to have Pat Mahomes on the show and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, come on. Here. Pat Mahomes, he could be preparing for a Super Bowl. If we're going to start this whole jinxing thing. No, Paul, seriously, man. Like seriously, and just continued success. And thank you so much for the continued support, because it really helps us massively. And yeah, we'll definitely meet up at some point. But seriously, happy St. Patrick's Day. No firefighter antics this year. Yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah.
Not getting punched in the face this year. At least, that's the plan. That's the plan.
That's the plan.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, fellas.
Thanks.